here's just average Joe Allie over here with her clothes on while doing the podcast, or Scott's got to have his nipples out.
But it's the Scott and Allie Not For Air podcast. The rules are gone. The shirt is untucked. Here's Scott and Allie.
I am so privileged. I am on top this week.
You can't always be on top. I mean, great place to be, but you can't always be on top.
I was waiting for you to say you can't always be on the bottom like you were trying to raise me up. But
no, you can't always be on top. I watched the Ellen DeGeneres stand-up special last night.
Did you really? Oh,
I
my
did.
gosh. Okay, so I have watched the promo for it 100 times, and I keep forgetting that I have Netflix. Although, I just started watching, and we'll come right back to Ellen. It was because it was there, and it was right when I went to Netflix. I was going to watch more Ozark. Yeah, I'm the one person that still hasn't seen the whole series, and I'm getting through it.
That's okay.
And all of a sudden, this story of Vince McMahon came up. Now, Vince McMahon.
Yes.
Did you see? Okay, I started it last night. Now, I haven't watched wrestling on a regular in many, many years. But when I was younger, I used to love like the Hulk Hogan era, the Macho Man Savage, the classics, right?
I'm curious about this documentary, though.
So here's the thing. They even say in the documentary, most of the interviews were filmed prior to the 2020 sexual accusations that came out about him.
Oh.
So I haven't gotten far enough into it yet, but it really grabbed me because right now they're talking about the early days of the company, how it went from very regional to becoming what it is. Like they're telling that story, which I find very interesting, and talking about and they call it an art, pro wrestling. It's an odd one.
Yeah.
But I'm interested to see how this progresses because he does at least have a perceived reputation, although he says he's nothing like what you think he's like.
That's like most celebrities, I think. But also, I don't know if I want to watch it now that I know that all these interviews were prior to the sexual assault thing. And I saw the little tiny trailer with Bob Costa?
Bob Costas?
Costas, yeah.
Yes.
And why
The
did
sports
I think,
guy.
Why did I think Costa?
Oh, we work with a Costa in another market. That's his first name.
Just blend it all together.
Yes.
And he was saying that people in the trailer, it was people know, it's not that he said people know it's fake, but he basically said that the people who are viewing it, they know it's kind of a soap opera.
That's exactly what they said.
Yeah, they're engaging with it, living kind of like vicariously through it. So wrestling isn't for me, but the Vince McMahon thing is interesting to me, but it's interesting to me after the controversy. So now I don't really care about seeing it then.
Well, let me get a little further in and see how they deal with it, because that legitimately, I think, is what took the WWE to being sold for like $9 billion it's the people that run the actual fights, the MMA style fights.
Okay.
I can't remember the company. Not important right now. But anyway, I want to hear about the Ellen thing. So you watched it.
I watched it. And, at one point, and she, of course, references, being on top of her game at one point. So we started the show by saying, you can't always be on top. And Ellen, in my humble opinion, is not, and I don't think ever will be ever again, because the special, first of all, she talked about it. She talked about how she used to be she was the nice one, right? Mm-hmm. And then now she wasn't. She was the mean. I don't want to say queen of mean, but she was the mean one. And I think the jokes that she told, because she didn't talk about this scenario at first. At first, she just told jokes. And they were jokes that I feel like are common jokes. Mm-hmm. For instance, she was talking about windshield wipers and all the different settings. And that's something that I think is all relatable to all of us. You've got your really fast one, then you got your slow one, then you got the one that's like, okay, come on.
Yeah.
And okay, that
never times out right.
You chuckle, and that's great. But what I found about her jokes was it was jokes that I feel like I've heard 1,000 times before, or I've seen that perspective on social media. She, I think, has lost her touch.
No, I don't think that's what it is. I think she went back to basics. I think she pulled herself back to a place. I mean, Ellen hasn't done stand-up like this, to my knowledge, in a long time. When she was doing the television show, I mean, maybe she went out on some tours. I never followed her schedule that tight. Do you think she could have gone back to really just the very ground level and said, that's where we're going to start again, or that's where we're going to go. It's a safe spot.
If she's playing it safe, she's playing it so safe that I did not laugh, like barely. And I was like looking at my phone. I'm like, I am so bored.
Okay.
And this, and what I like about stand-up comedians is a couple things. I like when they, number one, tell the story. So they start with something, tell a story, and then they come back to it at the end. The callback, it totally comes full circle. And I think that that's an art that not everyone has. I also love it when somebody tells like a windshield wiper story or Girl Scout cookies or whatever the topic is, and they bring a turn to it, or they bring a joke out that I was like, I didn't see that coming.
those are the best.
That was great.
Yeah.
It's like thinking outside of the box, and she just isn't.
Okay, now let's get to the dirt. How far in did she go with the scenario? For those that don't know, apparently, and you can add more to this, please. She was always known as the Queen of Nice, and then there was some stuff that had happened, and again, this all went down during the let's cancel everyone on God's green earth phase of life that we had a few years back, where she apparently wasn't so nice to some staff members backstage. I have always stood by the fact that she is from an era. In fact, I know this for a fact. She got her start on Johnny Carson, okay, way back, the old Tonight Show. And I think they stayed connected for a long time. Now, I know a little bit about that era of the Tonight Show, more like a historical entertainment side of it. Johnny was I'm separating myself from all the, I hate to use the term little people, because the little people are what make the shows come together, but he stayed away from them. He would always smile, hi, how are you? But it was very, just
compartmentalized.
It was. And he would deal with his producers in turn. I mean, it was very up and down the ladder kind of a thing there. I do know from what I've heard, he was, he was super antisocial in groups, like in parties, but yet could go in front of a ton of people. Now, I do know that from the stories I've heard, and there's podcasts out about this, there's a few that I've really dove into and listened to in years past, that he would be that guy walking up the hallway, getting ready to go on stage. Someone would walk by, oh, hello. It wasn't mean in any way, but I don't think he was connected to every single person that worked there. And there are, of course, stories of some people that perceived him as mean, maybe because he was more to himself. I believe that that's a lot of what the Ellen show was produced like back on television. I don't think she got everyone together and had a small staff of 25 people. I think it was a larger group, and whether this person was put off by not getting a raise, maybe whatever the scenario is, I don't want to create something. I think that's where this stemmed from, myself personally, because weren't there people that did come forward and say, boy, you pegged her wrong. She was not a mean person.
I see what you mean, because there are certain generations that operate their businesses one way, and then business now has evolved into a different way. And I can give you an example. One of the things now that, like, we have salespeople, we have account executives, and sometimes they want to be thanked, or they want like a gift card, or they want to have some sort of token of appreciation. And I understand that. I really do. And a comment was made when one day one of our younger sales account executives had said something about that. Like, basically, I want to be seen. And the response back was, isn't your commission enough? Not anymore. And that's where I think that how Johnny Carson did it may have worked at the time.
Well, absolutely. How
then Ellen possibly took that model and used it just doesn't work anymore.
Very possible.
She did say, because she talked about it, but I don't think she really went deep enough for what I was looking for. She did say something along the lines of, well, I ended my show with be kind or whatever, but she's like, if I would have ended my show with like F off,
yes,
then it would have worked. And I think that is kind of the problem, is that you're now pigeonholed into being a certain way all the time, and you cannot not be that way. That's not fair for us, though. Now, I don't
it's
know how she
not.
was treating her employees. But
That's
not,
what I'm getting at. I don't know what happened in that production of that show. I'm totally speculating, but I'm wondering, was it something similar to that person was unhappy for whatever reason or whatever situations happened?
I don't know, but her head writer is a woman named, or head writer was a woman named Karen Kilgariff. Karen Kilgariff is now one of the top podcasters in the world with a podcast called My Favorite Murder, and has not been verbally kind about it. So it gives me the indication, but that's her perspective. She feels like Ellen was being a certain way. And then, so that tipped me off when we talked about Ellen on the show at the time. I was really heavily listening to My Favorite Murder. I don't really listen to him anymore. But at the time, I was like, oh, man. It was like all the Diddy stuff that we're going through right now.
Wow.
There's another podcast
Ellen
that
had freak-offs.
Yes. There's another podcast that I listen to, and the two females on there talk extensively about Diddy so much that I was like, what is going on? They've got some inside scoop on this. And it, as far as like the My Favorite Murder chick too, she obviously did too. She lived it. She was the head writer.
All right, so I have a question for you. Specifically about this. And I'm sure you're aware of this because you're a big comedy person. I have heard, sorry, still getting over a whatever cold, in that first 4 weeks of back to school, everybody in the house gets sick, guaranteed. I have heard this, and maybe you've heard this. Most comedians do what they do because they are emotionally damaged somewhere else.
Yes.
Whatever the situation was, could have been a childhood trauma, could have been a very much, I'm terrified of being, whatever it is, high anxiety. You think Robin Williams and stuff like this, the poor man committed suicide, but yet one of the funniest people on God's green earth. And you're like, how could someone with so much energy, but yet he was, look, I'm not saying anything that I don't think is known. He was a heaping pile of shit on the inside emotionally. And that's emotional. Do you think does it change the view at all if you are like, this is the way she was wired. She was wired with some sort of psychological thing, and her outlet is either on stage doing comedy or was the show or whatever. You and I have lightly danced around the fact that we were, on the grand scale of life, probably both lightly bullied in school when we were younger.
Yeah.
When I got older through the school years, it changed. But in the beginning years, look, I wore Coke bottle glasses that thick. I was the nerdy kid. There was no hope for me at the time that I went to school early on. But I had a pretty good sense of humor. And that
saved me.
That did. And you and I personally have talked about this, maybe not so much on the podcast, on the show, and we can go further into this if we want to. But on the mildest level, we went through some stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm not speaking for you. For me, I'm saying on the mildest level. Part of the reason I do what I want to do is I want to be remembered for something. Now, unfortunately, the likelihood is
like a legacy.
Yes, a little bit. I want people to say, wow, I enjoyed what that was, or he brought feelings out in me that were there. Hence why we do a day-to-day show. I want to be more than just, and no disrespect, I want to be more than a person that just sits behind a desk and does numbers.
Yeah.
That's not what, I want to do. I want to be that kind of character, bring, I hope, a degree of joy or laugh or something to people. And that's who I am out doing what we're doing right now. But
that's something great to strive for.
Well, so many, I keep trying every day.
Right.
But a lot of these comedians, especially the big ones, your Ellens, your Jerry Seinfelds, although he doesn't really talk about it too much, I don't think. They all went through stuff or have a psychosis somewhere in their psychological makeup, and it's really interesting. You're like, how could someone be this? But in reality, they're dying on the inside.
Ellen talks about that a little bit too. And have you ever heard of the comedian Mitch Hedberg?
You've mentioned the name. I probably would know if I heard the bits.
Hysterical, love the guy. Committed suicide.
Mitch, if you find the podcast, oh, never mind, you won't find the podcast.
He committed suicide.
Skip that line.
And that was said too, that he was one way on the stage and then a different way there. Ellen also said in her podcast or in her stand-up special that yeah, it's my show, but do I have to be responsible for literally everything? I can't be. I can't. Basically saying there are some responsibilities from producers and other people on staff who are supposed to help navigate that.
She is confirming what I said. She was using a similar to the Johnny Carson Tonight Show style way of doing it. Based on what you just said, that is where my brain goes. She was doing the ladder up and down kind of a thing.
What really stinks, I think, is finding people, and this is so hard. We have said this off air, and I'm going to say it right now. When it comes to producers and other people that are working for you, they will never care about your show as much as you do. And I love our producers that have come in the door. We've had a producer, Matt, a long time ago. We had producer, do we have two Matts?
Yeah.
Remember Matt Hott? And then there was Matt, okay. Neither of those people will love my show the way I love my show.
Sure.
And what stinks in being in Ellen's position, and if you own your own business, you also understand this. People who work for you, they might enjoy working for you. I'm thinking of one of my girlfriends. She owns a clothing company. She actually owns a clothing company, a venue, and an Airbnb. And she has an assistant. She has an employee. And I think both those people are very great. I don't think either of those people love her business like she loves her business.
Well, it's hers. But here's something else to think about. Was Ellen's show really her show? And what I mean by that is her name was on it, but it's not uncommon for a syndication company or a production company to say, we're going to use your name as the name of the show, i.e. the Ellen Show. But in reality, she was the face of the show. She came out and she did the bits, the skits, the conversation, and it's not really her show. It was a invented a kind of a thing, and they said, but we're going to call it the Ellen Show. But then what happens, if that is the case, everyone perceives it as though this was her brainchild. This was everything to do with her. She was at the top down. In reality, a lot of times these people that are hosting it are the hired face of it. But they didn't necessarily come up. Maybe they were involved in some of the planning and some of the let's go this route here. But in reality, it was a production company or somebody going, we need to make millions. And this particular comedian or personality, they've got a lot of love, and we're going to tap into them. You know what it is? It's exactly what is happening right now with Wheel of Fortune. And I just read an article the other day. The ratings for Wheel of Fortune since Ryan Seacrest has taken over as host have skyrocketed. More in the past 5 years have watched the first week than they did at the last 5 years of Pat Sajak. Okay. Now, interestingly enough, there is a bit of a thing going on, and it's something that happens in where we live specifically. We're in an area that a new restaurant opens. Let's call it a Popeye's Chicken. Let's call it a Dairy Queen, whatever. Explosive sales for the first 3 to 6 months. It is, everybody pays attention to it.
You're in line for 30 minutes.
Then it settles. And it's kind of like, that's one of the many that we have around here. I never see the line all the way to the street at Popeye's Chicken anymore, like it did when it opened. And I mean, Chick-fil-A, if they come to the market, shout out, they might end up keeping up that business. It seems like that's the one that does. But many of them, you get this huge boom and then it settles down. And I say this because what they did is they tapped a very well-known personality in Ryan Seacrest, and factual. He is a face like what was Dick Clark back in the day.
He's a household name.
He's a household name. And they tapped him because, one, he's safe. Two, it was going to get the pop. It was going to bring some attention back to it. But Wheel of Fortune is still Wheel of Fortune. If Ryan Seacrest stays for 2 years, which is my prediction, by the way, maybe 2 to 3 years, he is a job jumper.
Although I didn't see Drew Carey lasting as long as he did on Price is Right.
Yeah, but Drew Carey kind of, I think once he got to that, the idea of him going out and becoming what he used to be, It changed. Ryan's not like that. Ryan is involved in Idol. He's involved. He still does a daily radio show. He's going to be doing other things.
The Kardashian Corporation. He was one of the people that had he was nurturing that empire.
If we are lucky enough to be doing the Not for Air podcast in 5 years and continue with everything, I want to come back to this because I don't see him staying. But what my point is, Wheel of Fortune's Wheel of Fortune. They pulled in a name and they slapped it over it. The Ellen Show is a mold, and it is a mold just like Drew Barrymore, Kelly Clarkson, the late night shows. There is a mold to that. Who is the person that's going to do it? Now, it might be named, and you think that it's going to be that, but think about this. Ellen ended, Drew and Kelly went through the roof. It's the same show.
Oh, yeah, there's the similar template. Going back to Ellen, though, the one thing I wish I knew was it her idea or were they just plucking her name and putting it in there? Because maybe she didn't realize how big, and I don't think you can never realize how big the show is going to be. Because for me, if my name's on it, then I definitely want to have that sense of control or make sure that I can control as much as I possibly can with my name being on it. Now, so if it has my name on it, then I consider it my show. But now we were talking about the behind the scenes people not loving it as much as you.
Yeah.
But you have to find employees that you can trust. But I think here's what happened is that, okay, she trusted, let's say his name is Jack Smith. She trusted Jack Smith as the producer and for him to do X, Y, and Z. And maybe she knew that there was some other things going on, but Jack Smith really got the job done. Nobody was making waves about it, so let that go on. And then all of a sudden, bam, it is like the floodgates open, and she couldn't do anything about it. I think, and I truly believe this, that but maybe people are not as intuitive as myself, but we have had employees come in and out that I'm like, get rid of them. We don't need this. Everyone's so afraid to do it.
Why can we see it's not working, but somebody else can't?
Yes, that's why I can't figure out if they're intuitive. I'm not the person to fire people. I'm not fire happy. That's not what I'm looking for. Of course, I want to see people succeed and nurture them and water them and make them grow. But I think there's got to be a point that you go, you know what? You're not going for the same goal that I am.
You know where some of this can come from too?
Where?
Take Jack Smith, for instance, getting it done every single day.
Yep.
Okay, you're the host. You've been doing this for a long time. Now you're beginning to get used to I've been doing this, this is my routine and stuff like this. You may take your eyes slightly off the ball. And again, I'm not saying this happens.
No, I think you're right.
You can coast a bit. Well, Jack Smith comes in and goes, geez, my friend Heather Rose has been begging me for a job, and to shut her up, I'm just going to get her a job on the job and on the show. She's in the background doing whatever. And nobody's really monitoring what she's doing. She's taking a paycheck, and it's kind of coasting there. So you got the host or the personality, well, they're in their routine, they're doing what they do, and maybe not getting together to do one-on-ones, whatever the case may be, if that's what they want to do. And now somebody else brought somebody in, and we've seen this happen. We've seen people brought into organizations, and it's the theory of why? What was that? What was the reason behind this? So there are so many factors
there are. And go watch the special if you would like, if you want to get a little insight into the whole thing. But I didn't feel like it was enough as far as that goes. We are going to have to wrap up the podcast.
I know,
in a second.
You've got to go collect an award for the show, damn
it. Yes. But I can't end here.
Okay.
Because I have this story. I have two stories. One is going to have to wait for next week. But I have to at least give you one that, Scott, you know about, but it has got to be talked about.
Okay.
There is somebody on my social who I have been quote unquote friends with, meaning friends on social, for a long time. We occasionally run into each other. We have some overlapping in events, maybe friends, things like that. So I see on this person's social the other day that they are celebrating their birthday. They're celebrating their birthday with some friends of theirs, but their friends have an entire family. It's husband, wife, and I think 3 kids.
Okay.
So single person here, family over here, okay? Now, they all decide they're going to go hiking at Tacanic or Letchworth or something like that. So the picture on social media is this, everyone's in front of a waterfall.
Yes.
Everyone's hiking, and the family's all like, hiking boots and backpacks and just looking so cute, ball caps and everything. And here's single person over here, shirtless. You're hanging out with a family and you're shirtless?
It's an odd one.
Like,
but
why are you like, hey, bro, just chilling at Letchworth without my shirt on?
Because he is, I've seen the picture and
Just couldn't believe it.
oh my God. But I know why.
What part of this environment are you meaning, like hanging out with a family?
I got it.
Are you
I know what it is.
I just gotta take this shirt off. Whew,
I know what it is.
What?
So you take the, no disrespect, incredibly just normal, average looking family.
Yes,
they
they
are.
are.
Maybe a slight dad bod on dad and maybe a bit of a mom bod on mom. It just is the way it goes.
Yeah, there was nothing about them that really stood out to you, right?
Except for him. He was chiseled like an Adonis. He had the longer, this guy is good looking, right? So
He's got those what are those lines? Those lines that like lead down if you're wearing swim trunks.
Oh, they lead right to the pecker?
Yeah. Oh,
so, okay.
don't say that.
So, they're lines. So, this guy, that's number one, how he gets away with it. This is the guy.
Oh, because you look good, then all of a sudden you should just be like, whoo,
why am I not doing this podcast shirtless? Because I don't have those lines.
That's
They're
what
hidden.
I wonder.
They're hidden.
Oh, right.
So,
every day.
So number one, there's that. Number two, you said he's
By the way, says the man who took his pants off in the studio this morning.
I had a puppy that peed on my jeans in the middle of the night, started drying. I didn't know. And you've helped me.
Scott's looking for an excuse to take off his clothes in the studio.
You've helped me get into costumes before shows and stuff like that.
Oh, I'm not looking at your pecker. I'm just saying you're always looking for excuses to take your clothes off.
Well, listen, I got to tell you, the other reason I think that he was doing it, you said he was single, right?
Yes.
Okay, there you go. He knows.
Oh my God, Scott's taking his shirt off.
What? You told me that I should start taking my clothes off. He knows.
Here's just average Joe Allie over here with her clothes on while doing the podcast, or Scott's got to have his nipples out.
But the guy is chiseled like an Adonis, handsome as balls, like disgustingly good looking. And
I hate you for your good looks.
Yes, I hate you for your looks. And the reason he's doing
I want to
it,
punch you.
He's doing it because he wants the single lady hikers to pay attention to him.
Oh, so
that's the reason the shirt came off at whatever waterfall, Central New York. What?
So now you're gonna pick up chicks while you're hanging out with a family? Is that what you're saying?
You're safe.
All of a sudden, you
are safe.
Oh yeah, because you're with a family.
Yes.
Oh, family
you are
likes
safe.
you.
You're chiseled like an Adonis, and you are handsome as all hell. But you're safe.
Family loves you. They think that you're just
This whole family became his wingman.
Yeah.
The whole fucking family's his wingman. Oh my God, he's brilliant.
A 10-year-old is like,
brilliant.
Get it?
Yeah, this guy, Uncle Bobby, single.
Uncle Bobby. Fist pump. Yeah.
Well, that was fun. Wasn't that fun? That was fun. Do us a favor, will you? Subscribe. Share the Scott and Allie Not for Air podcast. Touch our buttons. We know you want to.